My name is Susan Mitchell. I am 40 years old, single, and I have spent most of my life taking care of other people, especially my younger siblings after our parents passed away when we were still young. From an early age, responsibility became my normal. For years, I worked long hours, saved every possible dollar, sacrificed comfort, and lived carefully so that one day I could finally have something of my own. Eventually, all that effort paid off, and I bought this house, my very first real home, a place that truly belonged to me and represented independence, safety, and stability. That night was supposed to be joyful. It was meant to be a celebration, my housewarming party, a chance to gather family together, laugh, eat good food, share memories, and feel like life was finally calm and normal again. The living room was full of noise, music, chatter, and the soft clinking of glasses. People were smiling, talking over one another, and enjoying themselves. My brother Kevin walked over to me holding a plate in his hand. He was smiling wider than usual, a smile that felt practiced rather than natural. He held out a slice of cake and said, "Eat more, sis. We prepared this especially for you." As he spoke, his eyes stayed fixed on my hands, watching every movement closely as I reached for the fork. Something felt wrong. The smile never reached his eyes. The way he leaned in and waited felt unsettling. I had seen that look before in different situations, but never quite like this. I pretended to adjust the hem of my dress and bent down just enough, then in one smooth motion I switched my plate with Kenise, my sister-in-law, who was standing right beside me. No one noticed the switch. Not Kevin, not the others, only Connie glanced over for half a second, but she did not say anything. I took a small bite from my new plate. Nothing happened. It was just normal cake. A few minutes later, Connie took a forkful from the plate I had given her. It started subtly. Her hand began to tremble, the fork shaking against the plate. Then her face turned pale. She pressed one hand to her stomach, swallowed hard, and tried to speak, but her words came out slurred and broken. She looked around the room in confusion, her eyes unfocused, and then slowly sank into the nearest chair, breathing fast, eyes wide, as if she could not understand what was happening to her own body. Kevin froze. The room went quiet. Conversation stopped. Music faded into the background. People rushed over, asking if Connie was okay. Kevin knelt beside her, his voice tight and controlled. Connie, what's wrong?" She tried to answer but only managed a weak, garbled sound. Within minutes, he was helping her toward the door, explaining that she must have eaten something bad and that they needed to go home. The party ended almost instantly. Everyone left early, whispering in concern and confusion. I stood in the doorway watching their car disappear down the street, still holding the plate in my hand. Something deep inside me had shifted. If you want to know what I discovered when I started putting the pieces together, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now. You will not believe what comes next. After the last car drove away and the street fell silent, I turned back into the house and closed the door behind me. The noise of the party vanished so suddenly that it left a ringing in my ears. I went straight to the kitchen, set down the stack of plates I had gathered, and began rinsing them under hot water. The routine helped give my hands something to do while my thoughts raced. Kenise's reaction replayed again and again in my mind. The trembling hands, the way she clutched her stomach, the slurred words that barely formed before she collapsed into the chair. It had not looked like a simple faint. It was not dramatic vomiting or a full collapse. It was just enough to stop the room. Just enough to end the evening early. Kevin had reacted immediately, helping her up and explaining it away. No one questioned him. Why would they? As I dried a glass and placed it on the rack, my thoughts drifted back to the months leading up to that night. Kevin had been asking questions about my doctor more often than usual. Not casual questions, but very specific ones. He asked if I went for regular checkups. He asked if my doctor had mentioned blood pressure or stress. I had answered without thinking because everything was fine. He was my younger brother. It sounded like concern. Then I remembered an afternoon the previous spring. Kevin had come by alone and sat at the kitchen table, looking around the empty rooms. He said quietly, "You live by yourself like this. If you ever get too tired, I can help manage everything for you. Finances, paperwork, whatever you need. Don't worry. His tone had been gentle and almost protective. At the time, I smiled and changed the subject. He sounded like the boy I had raised after our parents died, responsible and thoughtful. But now, those same words felt heavy. Help manage everything. The phrase would not leave my mind. I finished wiping the counter and walked into the small office off the living room. The filing cabinet stood against the wall, unchanged since I started working full-time at 20. I opened the bottom drawer and flipped through folders. I told myself I was just checking the house documents to calm my nerves. I needed to see the deed and the mortgage payoff, proof that this place truly belonged to me. My fingers stopped on a thin folder with no label except my own handwriting in the corner. Kevin P.O.A. I pulled it out. The document was dated 3 years earlier. A durable power of attorney. I remembered the day Kevin brought it over. He said the bank recommended everyone have one, just in case. I had been exhausted after a long week, trusted him completely, and signed where the sticky note pointed. I had not read the fine print. Now I did. The language was precise and merciless. If a doctor ever declared that I was incapable of managing my own affairs, medical or financial, Kevin would gain immediate and total control over my bank accounts, investments, property, medical decisions, and even where I lived. There was no expiration, no requirement for a second opinion. One doctor's note would be enough. My chest tightened, not with panic but with recognition. I set the folder on the desk and sat down. The house was silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. I thought again about Kenny's trembling hands, Kevin's eyes locked on my plate, and how quickly he had rushed her out. He had not expected me to switch the plates. That much was clear. I stood and walked to the window, staring out at the dark street. Tomorrow, I would call Scott Evans, the attorney who handled my home purchase. I needed real answers. For the first time since buying the house, it no longer felt like just a home. It felt like something I had to protect. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the bedroom windows as I picked up the phone and called Scott Evans. He had handled the closing 6 months earlier and was calm, thorough, and never rushed explanations. When he answered, I said, "Scott, this is Susan Mitchell. I need to see you today if possible. I found something in my files last night." He did not ask unnecessary questions. He told me to come in at 10 and cleared the hour. I arrived early. His office smelled faintly of coffee and fresh paper. Scott greeted me and led me into the conference room. I placed the folder on the table. I explained that Kevin had me sign it years earlier and said it was standard. Scott reviewed it carefully. His expression tightened slightly. He explained that it gave Kevin immediate control over everything if a physician declared me incapable. No safeguards. No court review. One doctor's note. I told Scott I was capable, independent, and had managed my life for decades. He smiled and said we could revoke it immediately. We did. We created new protections, ironclad and specific. When I signed the revocation, my hand was steady. After that, I went to the bank. I learned Kevin had been transferring thousands of dollars every month under the authority of that document. Money labeled as family support, emergency withdrawals, purchases, debt payments, all without my knowledge. I revoked all access immediately and secured my accounts. Weeks later, Donna came to my house with a recording. She had overheard Kevin and Connie discussing their plan. The dose, the intention to make me appear unstable, the power of attorney, the house, the savings. The truth was undeniable. When Kevin and Connie later showed up at my door, I did not let them in. I told them the power of attorney was revoked. I told them I had proof. Their reactions confirmed everything. I stood in my doorway, calm and unmoving, no longer afraid. The house behind me was mine. My life was mine. And this time, I was ready to protect it.